Well, welcome everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming. My name is Amber and I'm a workforce advisor with Community Futures Entre-Corp in Medicine Hat, Alberta. I support the southeast corner of Alberta, and a little bit about my role is supporting entrepreneurs, connecting them to hiring grants to help in attracting and retaining talent, connecting to resources, and to provide training sessions like the one we'll have today. I also have Clayton Willoughby on the call, workforce consultant with the Government of Alberta. We have a little similar overlap within our roles, and Clayton also does a really good job at connecting and distributing labor market information and sending out training for different and various organizations. He will be doing our Q&A or helping Michelle with our Q&A for the day. But the star of the show is Michelle. Michelle Moore is the Senior VP of Leadership Assessment and Development in Gallagher's talent practice. She leads a merger partner team, Horn of Sales and Leadership Development, who joined Gallagher in 2023. That provides custom learning, coaching, and consulting solutions. Michelle has over 30 years of experience working globally with leaders at all levels to help them improve business results. She has specific expertise regarding the impact of technology in organizations, teams, people, and leveraging human capital to drive innovation and transformation in a digital era. Michelle is a lifelong learner, and she has recently completed online programs like Shaping the Future of Work. Is it I don't know if is it MITx?
MIT edX, yeah, MITx.
Okay.
It's their fancy online school. Yeah.
I love that. And the AI for Managers certification program by Microsoft. So thank you so much, Michelle. I really look forward to hearing from you, and I think everybody else will be really excited about this call once it's all wrapped up too.
Yeah, that's great, Amber. Thank you, and thanks to Clayton too for the assistance today. Looking forward to the discussion. I know we have opened the mics up, so if people do have questions as we go through, I encourage you to come off mute or put them in the Q&A or chat if you've got access to that. We do want to try to make it as interactive as possible and make sure that we answer all of your questions. And we're here to talk about something that's really exciting, but not necessarily 100% unique in some senses. So if you look back over the last century or so, there have been a number of what we'll call inflection points where there's been some type of advent, like you mentioned, of electricity that has led to some type of a revolution, with the electricity actually leading to the Industrial Revolution. We've had the internet, which was actually invented probably about 50, 60 years ago, but of course led to the computer revolution, which started in business and then eventually made its way, of course, into our homes, which is a little bit different than what we see with technology now, which often starts like a ChatGPT with stuff that we can do at home and then makes its way into the business. So we've seen a little bit of a swing in how technology unfolds. And then probably back in 2009, 2010, we started hearing a lot about this digital revolution where we had forces like mobile phones and social platforms like formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, all of those types of things, analytic capabilities, and the cloud, allowing us to move the storage of that information from on-premise to up in the sky somewhere or virtual, not really in the cloud. And that really started the digital revolution, where organizations started to think about how can we do things differently from a business model, business process, how we interact with our clients, or even how we interact with our employees. And most recently, of course, we have gone through maybe accelerated by, of course, the global health crisis or pandemic, but we were already seeing a real shift in how people wanted to work. And of course, now we've added generative AI that the horse left the barn, the train left the station about 3 years ago, and we haven't looked back since. So we are at another one of those inflection points where we really are having the opportunity to reinvent how work is done and think about how we could not just leverage technology, but combine technology with human capability to drive productivity, efficiency, and more. So we're going to focus today on two specific topics. And again, please feel free, ask your questions. We want to make this as interactive as possible. If you've got something that you want to share about what you're doing as far as what, from your organization as we go through, we welcome those kind of comments. We've got some polls to try to get some information from you and learn what's happening out there. But we're gonna start by talking about what it actually means to lead in the digital era. And I think that that's whether you actually have an official leader title or you're an informal leader, because in some ways we're all leaders in our organization. And then for any of you who might be in the HR function or small business owners who have employees themselves, we're going to talk a little bit about how do you engage and upskill employees in this world where things are changing really quickly. And we might teach someone something today and tomorrow it's completely different. So that's what we're going to focus on. I will get started. I'm a fast talker, so if you want me to slow down, you can also give me that feedback. But look forward to hearing your comments as we go forward. So let's start with leading in the digital era. And traditionally, we've defined leadership as being able to achieve shared goals by working with and through others. And that's the way that we, influence if we're leaders, set priorities, all of those types of things. But the interesting thing is that, and this comes from a World Economic Forum that talks about machines being expected to perform about 42% of the current tasks that are performed in the workplace by 2027. So because of that, we really think that we're at this point where we need to maybe redefine what leadership looks like. So when we teach leadership programs at Gallagher, we talk about the fact that the new definition of leadership is really about achieving shared goals by working with and through others. So still setting those priorities and influencing people, but also leveraging technology. And we think that that's a really critical piece of leadership today, because work and technology are so intertwined, you can't really separate them anymore. And the fact is that in order for organizations to succeed with technology and in this new world of work, basically, that requires digital savviness, just like forming our culture, it's a team sport. Not one person. You can't just rely on your IT provider or your CIO to drive this. It really requires participations from all leaders in order to make this shift, to be able to fully brace in technology and make sure that it's used as a source of productivity and business value for your organizations. So we're going to start with a poll because we want to get you engaged as soon as possible. So over to my assistant here, Amber. Hopefully we can launch the first poll. And really curious to hear from your perspective, if you think about the leaders in your organization, or if you don't have a lot of leaders in your organization, other organizations you work with, how digitally savvy do you think they are currently? And we've got 3 answers. So we've got opportunities to improve, we're making progress, or you know what, we're pretty good. We've got very digitally savvy. That's really hard to say. Digitally savvy leaders. I should use some different words. That's a tongue twister on a Wednesday. So go ahead, pop your answer into the chat. We'd love to hear what you've got to share with regards to that. Oh, and we've got all 3 polls up. That's okay. So you can read through the poll. So we'll get to the second poll in a few minutes, but go ahead and answer those because I think we've got to work through those. The second poll is where is your organization in the adoption of AI tools? So you can go ahead and answer that one as well. And then the third question is, how are you developing your AI skills with your employees? You go ahead, you can submit your answers and we can see what we've got. So this is great. Okay, so we've got answers coming in. No, that's okay, Amber. No worries at all. It's all good. I'm going to take some screenshots so we can refer back to this stuff later. So how digitally savvy are your leaders in your organization? We've got about 47% of the people saying that we're making progress. So that's good. We've got 17% who said that their leaders are pretty digitally savvy. So that's not a bad number. And I will say, over time, we're seeing that become more and more prevalent. And I again think that OpenAI and generative AI, which took the industry by storm, and then Microsoft and other vendors got right on the bandwagon, have really really helped us make progress with that, because once we've got technology that's really intertwined with processes, it's hard to it's hard not to be digitally savvy. But I will sadly say I still go to some meetings with some leaders who have trouble sharing their screen and all of those types of things. So we still have improvement that we can make. So that's great. And then I'm just going to take some screenshots of the other answers, and we'll come back to those in a bit. So thank you for your answers, and glad to hear that we're seeing some changes. I remember, a long time ago, and I mean decades, well, maybe not quite decades, but about 15 years ago, when I used to work in learning and development for an organization. I was with Fidelity Investments, and the IT team would come to me and ask for money for investing in new technology skills and all of that type of thing for training. And I would just give them the money because I had no idea what they were doing. But I am happy to hear and see with the clients that I work with in the market, that we are making progress and people are becoming what I call a business technologist. And so when I talk about being a business technologist, and we're gonna dig more into this, I really think it's important, to understand technology from two perspectives. I talk about what I call big T technology, and that's how do we use things like generative AI or blockchain or quantum computing, which is another, up and coming technology to deliver business value. And when we talk about business value, there's really 4 ways you can use technology to deliver business value. So one, it can be your business model, or you can reinvent your business model. You can use it to improve your operating model or processes. You can work on your client experience using technology. And then last, and usually, unfortunately, least, is you can also improve your employee experience. But I'm also happy to see that that's becoming more prevalent for many organizations, because that used to be really the last thing that people thought about. We're really more focused on things that will generate revenue. And I mean, rightly so. Although now we've got a very large cohort of Gen Zs coming into the organization who know nothing but using technology. And there's this phenomenon that's happened over the past probably 15, 20 years called the consumerization of IT. And that goes back to my point of, in the old days, technology started in work, and then eventually, like 20 years later, we'd get the computers at home. Organizations were using computers far before we had them in our houses. Now the opposite happens. Technology becomes widely available to us. If we want to do something, we take our smartphones and we download an app, and then we go to work. And we often hear millennials or Gen Zs talk about the fact that work is where if they had to define work, they'd say it's where they go between 9 and 5 to use old technology, because we have such good technology at home. So that's really putting pressure on the type of employee experience that we provide using technology. So I think more and more organizations are paying attention to it, and that's actually a really good thing. So leading in the digital era and being this business technologist is really important. That's the big T technology that I'm going to talk about. But also, I call it the small T technology. That's being able to use the things like, Microsoft Copilot, or any of the, in fact, Office 365 tools like Planner or Loop, and being able to develop and support that digital dexterity so that the things that we use on a day-to-day basis in work to communicate and collaborate and get work done, that as leaders, that we're able to use those tools proficiently and keep up with the pace, because we know that it changes. And then the other thing that I think organizations so this is more, from a leader perspective, you need to know the big T technology, not be able to program it, but to understand how it adds value. You need to be able to use the small T technology efficiently and effectively. But your organization also needs to make sure that there's a really good link between HR and IT. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of these. And again, feel free, if you have questions, pop them into the chat or the Q&A. And also feel free to come off of mute if you've got something that you want to add as we go through. All right, so let's start with being a business technologist, we will make these slides available to you if that's one of the questions that you might have, and of course happy to chat with anyone on the call after this. So being a business technologist, there's four things that I talk about with leaders in organizations. So number one, being able to keep up on what are the new use cases for technology. So how are organizations using AI or blockchain? Um, Also then considering though, where is the technology in its maturity? Because this has a significant impact on the value that you'll be able to derive from new technologies, and also likely the adoption of people within your organization. You also have to understand how you can start, what are the risks, and then make sure that there's a business case with value and that you're actually going to be able to deliver some type of an ROI. I was reading this morning a report that talked about generative AI in particular, and Microsoft had some numbers where a lot of the experiments that are happening with AI and generative AI, the large language models right now, aren't actually delivering the business value that was anticipated, and I'm going to tell you why in a few slides. But let's start with understanding, what are the use cases? So how do you understand, as technology emerges, what can it do to help your business in those four areas I talked about? So your business model, your operating process model or processes, your client experience, or your employee experience. Well, for me, the number one thing that I do is I make sure that I follow all of the technology vendors, Microsoft, Cisco, Google. I follow IBM, Citrix, all of them on the different social media channels. So on LinkedIn, I follow them. On X, I still use X for work, not personal, just work. I try to. Although we were talking about basketball before we started. I also do post a lot about basketball because I do like basketball. But following the tech vendors is a great way to understand what's happening. They are always publishing case studies with clients. And I would say to you, don't be discouraged or only look for case studies in your own industry, because there's often industries that are maybe more a little bit further ahead from a digital perspective that you can learn from, that you might be able to say, how are they using it? How could we change it for what we do in our industry and the types of problems that we need to solve? So following the tech vendors, and then also the consulting firms. And from an IT perspective, my favorites are Capgemini and Accenture. But I also followed the Deloittes and the PricewaterhouseCoopers and the Ernst & Youngs as well, because they have a ton of free resources. Gartner is another one. So again, making sure that you've got, and a lot of what they publish is from a business perspective. It's not technical details, but trying to keep up with what's happening is a really, really good first step. You can also attend some of those business leader webinars, like Gartner. They have tracks if you're in finance or if you're in HR or if you're in sales, and often it's connected to technology. So you'll learn about things in very, lay person if you're not technical terms, but it'll help keep you up with what's going on with technology. You can also use AI to summarize the trends or explain the value. Now, again, be careful of the AI that you're using, because you always have to be aware of what the date is that the AI was trained up to. Some tools might be older. So if you ask the trends, you don't want to be hearing what happened in 2023. So that's just one caveat to be aware of. But there's lots of value if you're using something like a Microsoft Copilot, which allows you to now actually, or even a Google Gemini that allows you to search the web, the ChatGPT, of course, it can help you. And you can ask it really specific questions like, I work in this industry. This is the size of my business. This is these are the types of customers. Tell me how I might be able to use X technology, or just ask it a broader question. So lots of value to get the technology to actually help you. And then I say build a tech savvy network. So I think, regardless of what you do within an organization, if you're the owner and the entrepreneur, if you're someone who works in operations or HR, surrounding yourself with people who are more tech experts, I think is really important. So those are some things that you could do to understand how technology is being used, which could spark some ideas for how you might be able to use technology. And please go ahead and ask any questions that you've got, or comments that you might want me to address. So if you understand the use cases, that's really great. But you also have to understand, where is the technology, especially new and emerging technologies, in its life cycle. And if you're not familiar with it, so this is from Gartner, again, one of my favorite sources for keeping up to date. And every year they publish these these charts, and they're called hype cycles. And basically what the hype cycle does is it might take a particular technology, but sometimes it just talks about new and emerging technologies that are all completely different. They might be looking at unified communication and collaboration tools. They've actually done one on innovation before to show where it is. And what it tries to do is it shows from inception, when there's some type of a need and some type of new technology or way of thinking comes into the mainstream, what's the trajectory that it goes through from going from it's an innovation trigger, it's really new, and people get excited, but oh my goodness, nobody knows what to do with it. There's not a lot of use cases for actually delivering value. And so people try it and they say, I didn't like it, didn't do what I wanted it to do, and they either give up or they stick with it. And we start to see second, third, fourth, fifth generation technology, and we start to see the business value. And then obviously at some point the technology becomes mature, and we reach that plateau from what are those expectations and how does it deliver business value. Now, this is important to know in general when you're thinking about making technology investments, because obviously the newer the technology, the harder it's going to be for a number of reasons. And the user expectations might not be met. And if you look at where generative AI is, so for all of you who might be using some type of Copilot 365 or ChatGPT or your own instance of some type of a GPT, it's coming down to the trough of disillusionment. So last year it was up here, and everyone was like, "Oh my goodness, it's gonna revolutionize the world really quickly." It's still going to make an impact on work, but we are at that point now where, like I said, people have tried it. It's not giving the immediate value for a variety of reasons. It's still clunky, right? We've all probably used the technology, and it gives you different answers each time because the data is still being trained. It might give you the wrong answer. It hallucinates, it makes up answers. People don't really understand how to use it effectively. So there's a lot of things that are contributing to this. We're going down to the trough of disillusionment. But if you look at this little blue dot, what Gartner anticipates is that in the next 2 to 5 years that this will be a mature technology. And so we can't afford to fall behind. We need to make sure that we're keeping up with it, but we have to be realistic when we're experimenting and trying things with technologies that are, anywhere on this part of the hype cycle. We need to know that it's probably going to be a little bit harder, maybe not quite as effective as we think it's going to be. And we have to be prepared for that and realistic about our use cases. So really important, if you want to be understanding how you can use technology, next think about where is it from a maturity perspective. After that, you think, okay, we've got all of these ways that we could use it. We know where it is from a maturity, and we're going to be realistic about what it can do for our organization. So where do we start? Because you might have a whole bunch of ideas. Well, we always say the most important thing is to start with an actual business need. So I talk to lots of business leaders who are adopting some type of technology, and the answer when I ask, why are you doing this? It's because, well, everybody else is. We need to make sure that we're actually solving some kind of a problem or addressing an opportunity. Okay, yes, you could argue that we can't fall too far behind from our competitors, but there needs to be some type of a business need. So don't get distracted by the new and shiny objects, because there's lots of different tools and technologies out there. Think about your biggest pain points or the biggest opportunities that you have to deliver value, either internally or to your clients, and start there. Identify a use case that has measurable impact. So make sure that it's something that you can say, we're going to do X and we expect to see Y, and that you have a way to actually measure that Y value. And AI is really hard to do that because a lot of this is it's new. We've never done it before. And determine also, if we're going to try something, what would make us stop? And this is probably one of the most important things to do when you're experimenting with technology, is to think about the criteria for stopping that project. Because once you're invested, it's really hard to be objective. So, put in it that, we expect it to cost this much, or we need to be able to deploy it in this many days, or, we need to be able to find people with these skills to be able to do it. Identify what that success criteria is before you even start any of your projects or experiments, because it'll keep you honest and help you make good decisions along the way. Because again, sometimes you're going to try things, it's going to be harder, it's going to be more expensive and take longer, and you need to be prepared to stop and shift those resources to something that's going to deliver more value. And then take that agile approach, right? You don't have to build the Cadillac version all at once. You can start with, if you're trying to help people travel, just give them a skateboard as opposed to a car. So figure out how you can deliver value in smaller chunks to get things into production much more quickly. So being a business technologist, understand the use cases, know where the technology is in its maturity, and make sure that you're working on an actual business problem. And then the last thing is making sure that there is going to be that ROI. So this is kind of an extension of it, right? So we know when we would stop a project, but how can we be realistic about how much value it can actually deliver to our organization? So you have to think about, is it available? How are others using it? What's the cost of it? But some of these things are the things that are actually much more important in trying to come up with as accurate a return on investment as possible with technology. One being, what's the human cost of implementing it? And that's often from a skills perspective. So when technology is new and in more of its infancy, there's few people who have been trained on it, and you're going to pay a premium to try to get those skills to help you, or you might have to invest in training. Luckily, you've got your colleagues probably in the Alberta government and the Canadian government as well, helping with some reskilling programs. But there is a cost of finding people who know how to use the technology, and sometimes that's going to be too expensive, and it's not going to allow you to be to realize that value that you anticipate. Can we find those people? And then is the organization ready for it? Because what we're finding now with generative AI, and even Microsoft and the Googles, Cisco's, whoever the tech vendors are talking about this, is we're really having a hard time driving adoption, and we're gonna talk about adoption later. But you can come out with the best tool, but if your clients or your employees aren't ready to use it and there's not proper change management, you're not going to get that value that you've anticipated. Okay, so that's a little bit about, just to review, being that business technologist, and that means using that big T technology, so figuring out how you can use technology to deliver business value. I want to go back to the poll results. For the second poll is, where are you with an AI adoption? I got took my little screenshots here. And we had 55% saying there's some experiments going on. 15% said fairly widely adopted. 25% said we haven't really started. And 5% said it's fairly well adopted. So we've got 5% at one end, 25% haven't started. So, and then everybody else kind of in the middle. I would say, the good news is, for those of you who might be in smaller, more entrepreneurial organizations, it's actually probably easier for you to do some experiments than the big companies like Gallagher that has 50,000 employees, and it's very costly for us to. No, you could argue we do have more money, which is true, but it's hard really to move the ship when it's big. Before we joined Gallagher, we were a much smaller organization. We only had 25 people full time, and a network of consultants, about another 15 to 20 people at any point. It was much easier for me to experiment with technology. It was much less costly for me to, try things out like the Chat GPTs. I still had to put boundaries around them. And one of the things that you can do if you do want to implement in your organization a free tool like Chat GPT, the first thing that I had it do for me when it launched, back, I guess 3 years ago now, I think it's 3 years. Time's a blur. But I had it actually, one of the first prompts I gave it was, write me a policy on how to keep my client's data safe and secure using ChatGPT. And it popped out a little 2-page policy on how we should be using it, what we should put in, what we shouldn't put in. I took probably about 10 minutes to refine that and then launched it to the organization so that the people that we had in the company knew how to use it. So getting started when you're a smaller company is actually much easier. You still want to put some of those guardrails up because there is the potential that you need to keep your data, your any of your clients' data safe and secure, but you can handle that really quickly. So you might have an advantage, which is really exciting. Okay, so we talked about being a business technologist. That's about using that big T technology. Let's talk a little bit about being a digital leader by being able to develop and support what I call digital dexterity. And maybe before I dive in that, I will pause and see if there's anyone who has any questions or wants to share anything about their organization. This might be a good point to stop. I'll have a sip of my green tea while we think about it. Don't be shy. Feel free to come on off chat or off of mute or pop in the chat. Any questions about the first part? All right, then I'll keep going, but feel free, please share your thoughts, your ideas, and ask questions if you've got any. Okay, so let's jump into.
Well said, Michelle
Oh,
Moore. I
hi.
really liked your comments. Very
So
nice.
what did you say, Basil?
Yeah.
There are, Amber says there's no silly questions. That's right. So thank you for your comment.
Your presentation is very good.
Oh, well, that was nice. I did not pay her to say that, just to be clear. So, but thank you. Anyone else? Any other comments or questions? Yeah, and there are no silly questions. This is your chance to ask anything that you want. All right, well, I'm going to keep going, but feel free. Maybe we'll warm people up and they'll feel comfortable asking. Okay, so let's talk about then developing what I call the digital dexterity. That's to use that small t technology. So the tools that we use every day in our work to communicate, to collaborate, to be as efficient as possible. So we talk about the fact that these things change rapidly. If you look at how, and I'm not sure what technologies you all use, but even something like Teams. Teams changes almost every month. There's new features. There's a ton of things that have happened with the Microsoft suite in the last 5 years. And it's the same on the Google side. If you use Google within your organization, it's always changing. And so it's really important for us as leaders, but for all employees, to be able to continually adapt to those ways of working with technologies quickly and effectively. So that means, you know what, we used to do it this way. We're going to now do it this way. We got to keep up with what's happening, and it's rapid. I feel someone is off mute. Does someone want to add something? No? Okay. All right. Don't be shy. So this is a really important piece because as leaders within our organizations, we also want to be able to demonstrate that we've got these good skills. And we know as we've got more Gen Zs coming in, they expect it. I sometimes try to dazzle my sons who are 22 and 24 with my technology skills, and they do roll their eyes a bit and tell me I've been told I'm lame, but that I'm sure every parent can relate to that. But I keep on going. Risha has a question. Who typically should take the decision of bringing in new technology or exploring it? Is it always the CTO team? Could you share your experience with leaders who are typical sponsors? So I think, thank you for that question, Risha. I think everybody has a responsibility to bring ideas to the table. So I think regardless of, and when I talk to leaders, I talk to HR leaders, I talk to finance leaders, and I try to say that you should be, for your function and what you're responsible for, thinking of these new ideas. Now, who has the actual decision? Your organization, obviously IT needs to be involved to evaluate some of those things that I talked about. Is the technology available? Where is it in its maturity? Is there return on that investment? So organizations will generally have guidelines, larger ones. In smaller ones, you might not have this, but you could certainly put them in place. Have guidelines around what type of return on investment you would expect. So I think it's every leader, every employee's responsibility to come up with ideas. From a decision-making perspective, it might rest with maybe IT and that business leader. So everyone's going to be different. Yeah.
Okay, there's also another question that popped up in the Q&A. This one's
Oh,
from
thanks,
Darren.
Clayton. Yeah.
As I'm emerging with technology, is there anyone else that is experiencing the 3D sound effects? Any way to clear that up?
Oh. "3D sound effects." In today's meeting, do they mean? Or?
Yeah, Darren, could you unmute and just clear that up as Darren
Yeah.
Klein?
Yeah, and as Darren's thinking about that, I'll talk to Wanda. Wanda talks about examples of new technology. Well, the interesting thing is AI, of course, is big. There's lots of different AI. There's the large language models like the generative AI. And but there's lots of other things that, you know, blockchain is emerging, quantum computing. If you Google Gartner hype cycle emerging technologies, you'll probably get an image that shows you things. So kind of actually here, now let me just go back in my slides. I can show you. Where's that slide? There we go. You'll see they have a hype cycle like this that's for emerging technologies, and you'll see some really interesting things that could be augmented, you know, virtual reality, which is in some cases some form of AI, right? You'll see a whole bunch of different things on here, and then they will provide, you can then look at what that is, and it shows you. The nice thing about these, and again, this one is for generative AI, but they have one for emerging technologies. It shows you, based on the color of the dot, how long it is until they think it will be mature, right? So things that are down here, this one, they think it's going to be 10 years before it's mature. This one is probably 5 to 10. So you can start to say, from a watch list perspective, you know, anything that's less than 2 years, that has like the little white bubble, right? Like Edge AI. Now we're talking about AI agents, agentic AI. That's another big one that's come into the fray. That's up here now, but that's the hot topic this year. And you can see, again, this one is going to be 2 to 5 years before it becomes mature. So Gartner's a good source. Blockchain's one that's been around for a long time. Generative AI is probably the biggest one. Quantum computing is also one to keep an eye on. But Google the Gartner hype cycle, and you'll get some good information and learn some fascinating things about technology. Some of them, I look at the names and I start to read and I think I have no idea what you're talking about. So this is probably too obscure for me. So that's good. Okay, Risha says she doesn't hear any Risha does not hear any echo, so that's good. Darren, sorry that you're having trouble. I apologize. Matthew, yeah, talks about agentic AI is already impressive. Yeah, there's some cool things. And Microsoft with agentic AI, Microsoft has a ton of tools, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about learning pathways, but they've already created some agents like off the shelf type of things that you can start to use. And they've created use cases, you know, by HR, by finance, by sales. For those of you who might be entrepreneurial and small business, obviously driving revenue becomes one. So have a look at what they're already doing with agents for sales. And there's probably some free stuff that you can start to adopt. All right, this is good. We got them going. This is good, Clayton, Amber. Everyone's on fire now. This is great. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's good. Wanda loves learning about new technology. That's excellent. I love it too, and I think again, it's not about just technology. It's about how humans and technology interact, right? Because even when you think about implementing a new technology in your organization, it's the strategy that you build. It's how people work together on the project team to implement it. It's how you train and provide change management to the users that's going to have the impact. The technology is just it's one of the ingredients, but it's certainly not the secret sauce. And I think that's what's so exciting about this time is now we can all play a role in helping use technology to either be more productive personally, or bring ROI and value to our organizations. And Matthew says, being able to prove the ROI is where we have success. We don't focus on cost. Yeah, absolutely. For sure. It's not just about cost, right? And some of it's hard to measure though, and I think that's one of the challenges that we're having with AI now is that the benefits are so intangible because we're newer into the Gen AI. Like AI itself has been around since the 60s. I used to live overseas for a number of years, and I worked with someone who had been he'd been a CIO in Germany, and in I think like 1969, he led the German AI Institute. So AI is not new. The generative AI, these large language models, and what ChatGPT did has really, it's accelerated, that part. But AI has been around for a long time, so it's not just about the cost; it's about the value. What I have read has suggested that many organizations are overestimating the value that they think and the speed at which AI will deliver. And they talked about the fact that right now it's actually the back office stuff that people are doing to use AI to somehow streamline operations. There's actually delivering more of a tangible return on that investment versus some of the kind of the fancier things that you might be trying, or even us as people just using some of the productivity tools. Okay, so thank you for all those comments, and please keep them coming. And Clayton, feel free to call out those QA comments as well, because the chat's open, but the QA is open too. And anyone who wants to speak, feel free, like Fazla did, come on off your mute. You're welcome to chat. Okay, so back to the digital dexterity. So this is about our ability to use that everyday technology, like the Teams, like the Microsoft productivity tools, your Google tools, whatever you're using. And I always like to especially when I'm with really senior leaders from large organizations who often aren't the kind of at the leading edge of adopting some of these things. I like to do a little quiz with them to see how digitally dexterous, I guess that's the word, that they actually are. And so I'll ask them, like, how are you using it? Now, of course, most people, I think now, many people, probably the majority, are using generative AI in some way, whether it's through the Microsoft 365 tool, which I use every day. We also at Gallagher have our own Gallagher GPT, so kind of like our own ChatGPT version. I use both of them, and it is interesting because, again, both are still learning and being trained, and they give me different answers sometimes, but they really do help with some of the things that I have to do. But there's other features, of course, like being able to respond to emails and having it craft messages, being able to analyze documents that we provide in a safe and secure way. And of course, if we're using these tools, we need to be, again, making sure that we're not sharing confidential data or putting things into them that we shouldn't be, especially if it's like the free version or the external versions. So I think we're starting to get there, but it's a change management. I consider myself pretty digital, and I'll tell you, I started using Office 365, the Copilot in the Office suite last probably November. The first time I went on holidays, I came back and of course did the exact same thing that I do every time I come back from holidays, and I went through every single one of my emails. And then the next day I was like, oh, I could have had Copilot do it for me. So it took a while for me to train myself to use it, and it's still not always perfect. So again, we also have to be checking everything that AI does. So it's more like we're talking about now it as a teammate or a team, kind of a team player that helps us, not replaces us. And the two of us, the AI and myself, have to collaborate to get it right. But hopefully that one's pretty widely adopted. But there's other things at Microsoft AI Designer. If you haven't tried that, it's amazing. In fact, I think, let me just pop back here. I'm going to show you this image here. I generated through the Microsoft Designer. I said, make me an image of a person working with a social robot, and it gave me a whole bunch of things. So this isn't from some image bank. Maybe it's in there now because I made it myself, and maybe someone said, oh, that's good to add to the collection. But Microsoft Designer is really, really great at coming up with images for you, and I do use it all the time. And then there's things like just the productivity tools, like even just something like your OneNote or Planner. We use Planner all the time. But Loop is another really cool thing. Oh, Amber uses Designer. She loves it. That's awesome. Loop is another great thing. So Loop started in something that was just in a chat. So when you were having a chat in Teams with someone, you could use, it's like a little, it looks like that little sign that you have on the map that shows you are here. And what Loop allowed you to do in a chat is is to collaborate asynchronously. So we used to start using it, and this is now like 2 years ago, where we would be planning a webinar like this and trying to come up with topics. And instead of having a 30-minute meeting, we would start a loop. We would have our marketing team, our salespeople, everybody was in the loop, and you could create voting tables. So it replaced a meeting. Loop now has transformed into now like more of a workspace where you can create like a team environment and you can share documents and you can do all of that type of thing as well. It's still available in the chat, and that's how I tend to use it. But if you haven't tried Loop, it's a great way to replace meetings to allow for asynchronous collaboration. That means collaboration when you're in different places and different times. And again, it can replace a meeting, and I have yet to find someone who says, I want more meetings. So anything that will replace a meeting is a good thing. And Amber, I can share with you, if you just Google Microsoft Loop, you'll come up with a help page, but I can send you a link as well to it that you can share with everybody if you want. So what differentiates Loop from a regular Teams or group chat? It's a good question, and I'll try and give you a good answer. So Loop in itself, it's more encompassing. So think about it. So it's more like almost putting your channel and your chat together in a nice little combined workspace. And of course the Loop components can be pulled into the Teams chat. It can be pulled into email or that type of thing. So think of it almost like a little intranet, a mini intranet, a micro intranet site. So maybe you have your work intranet. Think of this as a team intranet where you can invite certain people, you can collaborate on documents, you can share things. It's more of a general collaborative workspace when you need a little bit more functionality. So that's the Loop app, because there is a Loop app, which is a complete separate space. It, of course, pulls from SharePoint, it pulls from Teams, like it brings in some of those backend things, but it's just a fun, think of it from a user experience as a cool way to work together, okay? Contained, everything all in one spot. You don't have to be searching all over the place. Now, you can still use Loop, not the app, but you can use Loop in a Teams chat. I use it still all the time, and that's probably how I use it most. I've tried the Loop app. I find it is getting messy as to, do you go to this one or that one? So you can, give it a shot and see what you like best. Give it all a try. But in a Teams chat, I use it all the time. So again, if you look at, and I'll see if I can put a little. I'm just gonna see if I can do like a little screenshot here for you, and I'll pop it in the chat because I got my own Teams open. So so I'm gonna just pop this in, copy, whoop, here we go. See, hopefully this works, paste. Okay, so I just put something in the chat so you can actually see it. So if you look in the chat, there is that on the very, very right bottom of the image I put in chat. So beside the little pen right at the bottom, there's that little thing that, like I said, looks like a little sign that you put on a map to say you are here. That's the Loop. And you can see that you can insert into a chat with someone. You can create a table. So if you got to plan out your tasks. And again, this pulls from different parts of Microsoft. You can create a bulleted list if you want to brainstorm together. You can make a checklist. You can do a task list. You can create a voting table. We use it a lot for voting tables so that we don't have to have meetings to, like I said, decide on things. You can create a numbered list. It's just a great way to, in one place, and then to keep track of all of that data. So again, Loop is for asynchronous collaboration. So when you're working with people who might be in a different place, not necessarily working on the task at the same time. So this is a great one. Time saver, has replaced many, many meetings for me. So those are some productivity tools that you can learn about. And again, just Google Microsoft Loop. They've got tons of information. You can watch little videos on it, and it'll teach you how to use it. But I'll share it and a link with Amber and Clayton, who I see. Clayton. Hi.
Yeah, just another question. I wanted to make sure that it didn't get buried in the as the chat moved on.
Thank you.
This one is thank you for the informative webinar. I am currently consulting for a company with over 7,000 employees. that is in the early stages of digital transformation. Their primary
Yes.
concern is security. They are
Yes.
averse to using cloud solutions and are considering developing
Okay.
their own private GPT. Given
Okay.
these circumstances, I would like to ask, how feasible is it to implement a personal secure AI in such an environment?
Oh my goodness. If I had a really quick answer to that question. Well, thank you first of all for the question. I'm going to put a lot of caveats around this. It really does depend. This research that I literally just read this morning did talk about the fact that most people are having more success implementing. So I'll back up. When you think about technology, you can buy it from someone else. You can build it, or you can probably borrow it, right, and license it, or so not buy it, but license a copy of what someone else is doing, like white label something. What the research is showing, and I don't know about this company and what they do and how technically savvy they are and what their enterprise architecture looks like, what kind of data they've got. But what the research so far is showing is that organizations who are buying things as opposed to trying to build their own are actually being more successful right now. And again, everybody's different, so I can't say that definitively would work for this company. Gallagher has gone ahead and we've built our own Gallagher AI, which isn't bad, right? It does great things, like it translates documents really well. I can put a proprietary PowerPoint that one of our teams, we might be doing training and we need to translate it into Cantonese or something. I can upload it into Gallagher AI because it's safe and secure. It's my own environment, and I'm able to translate it immediately. I can ask it some good questions. It gives me fairly good responses. I do get better responses from Microsoft Copilot, which allows me to either search my work files because I've got a license and it's secure, but it also allows me to search the web. I think that I think the feasibility really depends, right? Like there is a lot of work that's required in order to make sure that, and it's less about the security, I think, and more about the accuracy of it, right? Like to make sure that you've got good data governance, that your model is trained on the right data and without bias, and that you have a way of keeping it up to date. And I think that's where it becomes harder for organizations, is that making sure that your model is correct is probably the bigger problem that they would have versus doing it kind of in a secure environment. Security is probably it's a concern. I won't say probably, it is a concern, but it's the validity of your data model, I think, that most organizations are struggling with, and how much effort and energy it takes to establish that in a way, and then put governance in to continually update it. And I think that that's why most people are finding it's better to work, maybe work with a Microsoft or someone who has a GPT model that can maybe we can put the sandbox around it for you. But I don't know this company. I don't know who they are. I would not want to be the one giving them advice. I joke, I know just enough to be dangerous, and we certainly don't want it. But there was, and I'll try and find the link to it. I think I might have sent it myself. I get one of the things I follow, and I saw this morning, was from Wharton School of Business in the US, and there was a really good article that was back from May that talked about governance and AI. I'll see if I can find the link to it again, and I'll put that in the chat for Amber so she can send it out. It was really good because it talked about the governance that was required at an individual level for the people who are building the tool, at an organizational level to make sure that they've got the right guardrails around it and that they're training people responsibly, at a I think the next one was like a government level to make sure that the right legislation and all that type of thing were involved. And there was a fourth level that I can't remember, but it was a really interesting framework to just show how complex. And then it gave some checklists at the individual level. What do you want to look at the organizational level? It was a really interesting article that talked about just how complex that governance is to make sure that we are doing things in a responsible, safe, secure way that builds trust, because and I'm going to show you some numbers later on that talks about the mistrust that still that still exists. But maybe you can also use my checklist about do we have the skills? what are we going to do with it? Is it a business problem that we really have to solve now to help with that? Okay, a couple more digital tools that I want to just share with you, because this is our little quiz on how digital we all are. And these ones are less related to productivity and efficiency, but more to well-being and culture. One of the things for people who work in a hybrid way, of course, the complaint was, the bookends of my day have blurred because I don't have to commute anymore, so I stay at my desk longer. Microsoft, and this is again a couple of years old, they introduced something. So they have something called Viva. Not everyone will have access to this, but if your organization does use Microsoft Viva, they actually have something called virtual commute, what you do is you set a time that you want it to remind you to stop working. And this is, again, to help with that problem that people were having, saying, I'm working too much because I'm at home, I'm just sitting in my chair and until dinner's ready type of thing. Or until last night, I at 7:15, I thought, I haven't started dinner yet. My virtual commute came on at 6 and I just dismissed it. It wasn't good. But so literally what it does is it reminds you, hey, are you ready to wrap up? And then it shows you what you've got coming up the next day, so that you can start to think about, what's going to happen next and make sure you're prepared for it. It also can ask you, like, how was your day? Was it a smiley face? Was it like neutral? Was it a frowny face? So that you can track your well-being. So it's really designed from a well-being perspective. So it's something, if you work in a team that is complaining about burnout or, days being longer because you're hybrid, it's kind of just a fun thing that you can do. And it gives me a report and it tells me how good I've been or not good I've been, which again will contribute to my well-being overall, which is great. The other thing, and I will tell you, my team, which is dispersed across Canada, loves this. And this is another area where my sons told me I was completely lame and they couldn't believe we were excited about this. So if you're on Microsoft, and again, you have to have it turned on, so you might not have access to it, but many people will. You can actually build an avatar, and I could turn mine on now, but it would scare all of you. Probably I could turn it on. You can build an avatar that you can use in a meeting. So that's the first thing. So avatar. So I have my avatar that I've made of myself. We've put some guidelines in place as to when and how we'll use avatars in our team. So as an example, one of my teammates, I was telling Amber and Clayton, her kids are back in school. She's already sick. We don't expect people when they're not feeling well, if they're making the effort to come up to work, is to put their cameras on. So in my team, go ahead, use your avatar. If you're not feeling well, you can put it on. It's better than just looking at your big, the letters on the screen. But we also use it to go into what's called the immersive workspace. And this is the really, really cool thing. So Microsoft, and again, this is free, it's part of our license. It's turned on in our organization. I had it turned on before we joined Gallagher. We used to outsource our IT, and all I did was say to my outsourcer, turn this on. There was no cost to it. Microsoft has created an immersive workspace. And so with your avatar, you can then go and join this immersive workspace. And why I'm saying this is important for culture is because I've got a team that's across Canada. We don't get together more than once a year. We used to try those Thursday cocktail hours where people would come and talk about their cats, and nobody liked it. So now we do this kind of thing instead. We do a Friday Learning Fun, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, but we also go to the immersive workspace, which has different kind of settings. One where you can go and roast a marshmallow and play cornhole and walk around and look at a beautiful waterfall. And people love it. So people change they change their avatars, clothes for the seasons. They'll invite someone for, let's go to the coffee chat, let's sit around the fire pit and roast a marshmallow while we just catch up. From a culture building thing, it's fun. And this is where my kids who play games all the time, they're like, I can't believe that someone in a company would think that's cool. We've been doing this for years. But in a company environment, we haven't been able to do stuff like this. So for my team, it was the best thing that they ever did. And we continue to use it and really like it. And it's a better way for us to build culture versus those boring chats where nobody really wanted to come and everyone wanted to hop off after 10 minutes. We also as a team went through learning together, right? And I think that that's one of the things that if you want to create a digitally savvy organization, we did this. we created, we call it Friday Learning Fun, where we learn to use technology together. We have no expectations that anyone's an expert. Even sometimes I'll go and like the first time we tried the avatar and going into the immersive workspace or the meeting space, people were like, I can't get up from the fire pit. I don't know what's happened. And where, you know, where can you see my face? Like, I can't turn around. We had all of those funny things happening, but it was a way to build culture. And so we learn together, whether it's using the avatars, whether it's using whiteboards, whether it's using, I teach them how to use pivot tables in Excel. We do a tech learning club on a monthly basis, and people really enjoy it, and it's a great way to spread the digital skills, and
Michelle,
it's fun.
sorry to
Yeah,
disrupt you.
yeah, of course.
Can you send this to my email, the one that I signed up for with the email that you have? Because
Uh,
I will totally forget about this afterwards.
I have shared the presentation with Amber and Clayton, and they will send it to Fazla.
Yeah, because I have too many things in my head. It's just I
I know it's
forget
a lot.
things. I
I
forget things a lot. So because
no
I keep too many
problem.
things in my head, it's hard for me.
We've got you covered. We will share the slides.
Yeah.
It's no problem. Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah,
thanks.
No problem.
there's the slides. There's the slides, and it is being recorded as well.
Yes.
So you can
Yes.
always go back and watch it to get the information, and watch yourself ask the question. So
Yeah.
there's
There you
always that
go.
as an opportunity. Now, there was another question in the Q&A.
Yeah.
So, while digital dexterity is essential, it may also lead to loss of focus and thus productivity loss and even fatigue.
Yes.
What are some of the examples you have seen of how to manage change fatigue and to reduce the overwhelm?
Yes.
Any case studies / organizations that stand out for its best practices?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I do have, actually, it's a very good segue to my next slide. So if we could just park that just for 30 seconds, and I'm going to get right there because it's an excellent question and a valid question. So so hold that thought just for 30 seconds, and I'm just going to really quickly wrap up on how to build the digital savviness, and then I want to talk about the next slide is actually about the impact to people of technology. So in addition to creating the tech club, you can follow, you know, some of those vendors, and there's YouTubers out there that teach people. Work with your IT, and it doesn't have to be you. Like, find someone on your team who's excited about this. In my team, I lead it because I love it, but it doesn't. It just find someone who has that passion, and it'll really help. So now getting on to that question, thank you for asking that. It is important for us to consider the human impact of technology. And there is an impact, right? There are different skills required. People can lose control over things that they used to do in their job. Maybe they used to be totally in charge of it, and now AI is giving them the data. And I'm sure you've all heard people say in the past, the data's wrong. We don't trust the data. It can increase or decrease the amount of social interaction that's required at work. It influences the pace of work, and it can threaten job security, and certainly change fatigue, especially with the digital stuff, is actually a real risk. And I'm going to talk about change management as well, and how it's a little bit different for this. So what's the answer? So number one is make sure that you're not adopting everything, right? I was talking to the CIO of a large health tech company based in Canada, but they're big in North America, 2,000 employees, very, very large organization. And he told me they have something like 135, I forget the exact number, but it was large, of apps within their organization, or things that are different technologies that are used. I think the number one thing that we have to do is just make sure that we're really scrutinizing, is this a tool that we need to adopt? And only using the ones that are most critical, right? Like, don't, and again, back to the business need. Is there a business need for this? What value is it going to derive? Not, is it cool? Should we turn it on? Because people will say, hey, it's fancy, and maybe use it for a couple of days and then completely forget about it. So I think that that's the number one thing that we can do. I would say, so that will hopefully help us narrow the number of new technologies that come in. I think we can't control, obviously, the pace that vendors like Microsoft and Google come out with new technology, but we can determine what we turn on and off, and again, based on, is there a legitimate need? And I think that making it fun and involving people is the other thing, right? Because there's a lot of change that happens within organizations. This is just one of the changes that we're going to see. But I know for my team, making it really, really fun has helped. But also making sure that we're considering, and it's like someone had these slides. I'm sure I put a private preview so you can't look ahead. So someone was reading my mind. But we do have to make sure, from a change perspective, that we are supporting things with change management. And in some ways, what we're going through right now is a little bit different than the change that we have been seeing in the past, right? Where we would say, we're going to turn on a new ERP system. You're going to start using it right away. People might say, oh no, like really, do I have to use, there's something different? It's going to be a lot of work, but then you turn it on, they've got no choice, and there's commitment. So we still have these types of traditional change curves that happen, where we have to work with people to help accelerate them through the change curve, make sure that their dip in productivity that you might see is as little as possible, and that we're reducing the time that we have from when we're announced to when they're committed. So we want to compress that. We want to compress the curve in both ways. The challenge that we're seeing now, especially with new ways of working, and we're hybrid, and all of these different things that are happening, is it's not just change that we're seeing, it's actually transformation. Change is something, we make something different, we replace something, and then we just go on with continuous improvement. But transformation is a thorough and dramatic change in the form or appearance, a metamorphosis, and it's more related to agile innovation. And when we talk about, the world of work, and specifically what something like a generative AI might do for us, it's transformational. And transformational change is far more ambiguous. We can't tell someone now, based on what generative AI is, how their job will look in 12 months, in 18 months. So it's really different. And it often includes multiple changes over time. It's executed through experiments, iteration, fast failure. And it's not just top down like change, but it has to be top down, bottom up, outside in. And so we really, when we talk about technology and the transformation of the world of work, including the use of technology, we talk about a transformation curve, which people have different emotions, right? So it's not just about denial or resistance. When we say to people, isn't this amazing? You're going to get to hack your job and reinvent what work looks like for you. And people are thinking, I'm sorry, what? You want me to do what? I have no idea what you're talking about. And then they say, it's okay, go ahead, just go try it out. And it's all right to experiment and fail now. And people are thinking, are you kidding me? The last guy that failed got fired. Why would I want to fail? So the emotions that people are experiencing are really, really different. And we really need people not just exploring, but co-creating. And so from a leadership perspective, how we support people through this type of change is really, really, really important. And it requires a lot of contribution from this HR and IT partnership, right? And oftentimes I still hear in organizations, HR and IT saying, HR says, well, it's IT, it's a tech tool, it's up to you. And IT says, no, it's a change management tool, it's up to you. And then nobody will take the baton or pick up the ball, so to speak. So we really need, in order for this type of transformational change, where we're asking people to reinvent the way they work, these aren't things people are comfortable with. Oftentimes people like to often stay the same, and certainly don't want to take more risk in a tough environment where unemployment is high, and many companies are going through layoffs. The risk appetite is low at an individual employee level. So we really need to make sure that IT and HR are working well together to figure out how we need to bring the best of people and the best of technology together. And I think, again, if this will also contribute to overcoming some of that change fatigue, right? And when I go out and talk to HR leaders, I often I maybe do try to scare them a little bit. I'd also try to scare the CIOs a little bit by saying, listen, if the CHRO or your head of HR, their job is to drive business performance using human capital, and the CIO or CTO is to maximize business performance using technology. Now that they're so intertwined, do we actually need both of those? Or do we need something like a chief performance officer, where you've got someone who looks at both sides of it and can optimize the two, right? The blend of people and technology, and that's where we're really going. I think I started thinking about this probably in 2018, because I actually remember being in the meeting room where I wrote it on the whiteboard. But this spring, Moderna, one of the pharma companies, actually did this. They put their CHRO in charge of IT as well. And so I think that this is a trend that we're going to see in the future, probably more technical savvy CHROs or more people savvy CIOs, to create maybe this chief performance officer role. We're probably not there yet. And if you're in HR, you don't have to worry. If you're in IT, you probably don't have to worry yet, but you should start to skill up right on the other side. And we have to think about ways that we can really drive that collaboration of HR and IT to make sure that we are picking the right use cases, that we're using, people for what they're best at and using technology for what they're best at. And that we're helping people implement this in a way that's sustainable and is not going to cause burnout or fear or all of those things that, damage well-being that we don't want. And because there's not always a good collaboration, this is one of the things that I do see go wrong in organizations, where you might have your HR person and your IT person head of reporting to different people. They've got different KPIs. They don't really collaborate unless there's a reason to. So if we're implementing a new HRI system, a new HR system, information system, we might go to IT and say, help us. Or if IT needs some digital talent, they might go to HR. But working together from a business planning perspective is really, really a gap. And we really need to encourage much more of that HR and IT collaboration and start to put some KPIs or performance indicators in place on technology adoption that are shared. So not, one set or the other, because generally, IT is really thinking about some of the how many people used it, like are we adopting it, or there security incidents. We need to kind of blend those more people-centric and more kind of quantitative IT-driven metrics together, so we can align some KPIs to make both HR and IT accountable for the proper adoption of technology tools. And I think that that's becoming really, really important. Okay, this has been lots of fun, and I love all your questions and comments, so thank you for those. I'm going to jump ahead to the upskilling and go through some slides quickly, because I know we're coming up on our time together being over, and I want to make sure that I do leave some time to answer any other questions. So obviously HR does have a role in making sure that they understand what kind of technology can be used in the HR function to deliver value, but they also need to make sure that we've got the right way to upskill employees, and that's one of the ways that organizations are really, really struggling right now. We follow, many of the organizations that look at trends. This one comes from World Economic Forum. There's a number of skills that for 2025 and beyond, which we think are really critical. Interesting, of course, technology literacy is right there, and that's what we've been talking a lot about. But there's also some of those more human-centric skills, like creative thinking, being able to be resilient, flexible, and agile, analytical thinking, which you would think AI was good at, but it's not, because it doesn't always have all of the context that it needs to make good decisions, right? So there are some things here, that when we talk to our clients, we want to talk about, making sure that you're investing in both. So upskilling on the how do we use technology, but also upskilling on the things that will allow you to use technology better, that are discretely human skills. So think broad when you're talking about reskilling and what's required in order to work well in this era where technology and people are equally important. The really interesting thing, around technology adoption as well, and this goes back to the change management, and this comes from the Thomson Reuters report that was released recently. It is around professional services, so like legal, accounting firms, consulting firms, all of that type of thing. But I think it would probably be pretty similar across many industries, maybe not like the really leading digital industries, but in general, the bulk. When you talk about the sentiment and the future of AI, it's a real mixed bag. And in fact, 41% of employees actually have more negative opinions of what AI is going to do versus positive. Now, you can see the good thing is it's shifting, right? So the light blue is 2024. We're seeing, you know, some of those those go down, which is good. We're seeing some of them go up, which is good because those are the ones we want to go up, the excited and the hopeful. But there's really a real stigma that's associated still with AI. And before you start your reskilling, you need to make sure that you're understanding, you know, what are those true hopes and fears of the people in your organization? Because if you can't get past mindset, we know mindset precedes behavioral change, and you're going to have a really, really hard time. The top reasons that people are excited about AI, and again, this is still from that same Thomson Reuters, and if you just Google it, you'll be able to find it. It's free to download. People are excited because it's going to assist and save time, streamline work process, give more productivity and efficiency, bring opportunities for innovation and growth, provide useful tools and solutions, and it can be transformative in your industry, which is great. And the reasons why people are less excited about AI are concern for accuracy, misinformation, because we know it can be wrong if you don't give it the right prompt, or it's not looking at the right content, if it hasn't been trained well. We know that it hallucinates, it'll make up answers if it doesn't have one. So again, that's why that analytical thinking and lens from people are so important. It's got to be a partnership. Fear of the unknown, uncertainty of the AI trajectory. My sister's so funny. We had this debate about should you say please to ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or Google Gemini. And the CEO at OpenAI, I guess probably about 7 or 8 months ago, came out and said, please stop putting please in the prompt because it takes energy. It's sucking energy with the amount of politeness that people are using. So I was telling my sister and she said, no way. I'm always going to say please, because if the robots come to take over, I want to be on the good list. So she's someone who has a very skeptical view of the trajectory of AI and is a bit worried that the robots are coming to take over. And she wants our family to be on the we like them list. They're going to be safe. I don't think the robots are coming to take over. I don't have that same kind of Black Mirror doom and gloom. But people do, right? And it's she's not joking when she says it. She's actually does have some fear about it, and we can't dismiss that. I can because she's my sister. I can tease her, but in the workplace, we have to listen to people's fears and uncertainties, and make sure that we're providing that reassurance. There's also a kind of emerging school of thought about the over-reliance of on specifically Gen AI, making us lazy or less smart. We'll say that. We don't want people to stop thinking. In fact, people have to think more when they're using these tools, and that's really important. Skeptical that it can deliver as promised, and people are also worried because it does need careful monitoring, right? Like it can go wrong really quickly. I think a number of years ago, Microsoft had that experiment with a chatbot. I think it was called Tay or something, who got trained very quickly on very bad data that we didn't want it to be public mainstream. So organizations, and back to the question, should someone build versus buy? You got to be willing to put all that governance in place to make sure that monitoring is taking place if you're going to build it. So we do have to, as we're thinking about upskilling, really start with the fact that mindsets could be not as positive as we anticipate, especially if you're someone like me who loves tech, and I can't understand why no one would object to, or anyone would object to it. We need to take the good change management by make sure that we've got a strategy, that there's executive sponsorship. A lot of organizations are doing some skills gaps to say, what kind of skills do we have, don't we have? And that can be broader, not just AI, but from technology in general. You want to be creating that culture of continuous learning, like I'm trying to do in my team, where it's okay to say, I can't get up from the fire pit. I don't know how to make myself walk. And you can express the fears that you've got using new technology. We need engagement from especially senior leaders, but employees as well. And coming up with targeted learning paths is a really good idea. And I'm going to share just in the last couple of slides some ideas for that. When we work with our clients to train, we always start with mindset. So it's always about, some of this content that we've talked about. Why is it important for us to be digital leaders? Why do I need to be embracing AI before we start to get into any skill training? Because if people aren't buying in, you can give them all the training that you want on how to use it. They're not going to use it. And then just like with any training, we know through research that the number one thing that drives employee behavior is what that employee's direct manager does with them. And if there's training involved before and after the training. But it is how leaders actually coach and lean into it themselves. So the direct manager, the one-up leader of any employee, it's what they're going to do that's going to drive the most adoption. So one of the things that we'll do is we'll create, we call it a meeting in a box, where a line manager, doesn't matter if you're tech savvy or not, has a nice little PowerPoint and clear instructions on what to do, where we can now go and experiment together, and they can lead a meeting with their team, or they can have one-on-one conversations using the content to help their people, their team members who report to them, actually think about how they can use the technology. What are the use cases? I actually did this with our national team about just the week, actually the Monday before the long weekend, where I led a session where it's like, let's go experiment, let's try this out. Because we have more and more people getting access to Copilot 365, and it's an expensive license. We want people using it. So this becomes really important. Manager, supervisor involvement, probably number one thing to changing behaviors once people have access to it, other than mindset. And then creating, that community of best practice so that you can learn and share things, I think is really important. Okay, so the last poll that we had was around how are you developing skills? And what we heard was we haven't started, 10%. 86% said people are learning on their own based on personal interest or manager team-led initiatives, and only 3% or 5%, sorry, picked number 3. We're developing a plan. And number 4, we have an organizational plan. Nobody had that yet. So I encourage you to think about how you can maybe start to come at it from a little bit more from an organization perspective. Yes, Amber.
Hey, Michelle, some people maybe didn't have a chance to answer these questions, depending on the platform they logged in. So I don't know if anybody wanted to respond if they didn't get a chance.
Oh yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, thank you. All right, and I got 8 minutes left. Oh my goodness. Okay. And my email is in the PowerPoint, so I'm always happy to connect afterwards through email if you have questions you weren't able to answer or that you think of afterwards. So being able to coach people, really, really critical. So back to my slide, it's the manager, their job really to drive this adoption. And we have to approach, our coaching of people based on how people feel. And it could be anywhere from fearful, hesitant, neutral, cautiously optimistic, energized. And we're going to take the appropriate response. So if people are afraid, we're going to listen and we're going to try and educate them. If they're hesitant, we're going to ask them to explore small opportunities as opposed to saying, you're going to change everything that you do. If they're neutral, we're going to try and share some best practices to show how it might help and try to build some positivity. If they're already cautiously optimistic, we're going to encourage them to try and experiment. And if they're energized, we're going to try and leverage them as a champion of AI adoption. I think that's really important. We do a lot of work with our clients on, how do you have that growth mindset towards how technology can help you, but then also how can you implement it, right? How can you use prioritization matrices to say what's going to deliver the most business value with the least amount of effort? And then how do you implement those in an agile way? And what I would say is for those, because we had quite a few people who said they haven't started developing any upskilling plan or people are doing it on their own. These are my last slides. There are a lot of resources that are available. So if you have LinkedIn Learning, they actually have AI upskilling frameworks for depending on what, if you're a technical, non-technical person, they have pathways that you can follow. Microsoft has things built in. So we have Viva Learning. There's all of these different modules on using AI, which is fantastic, that we can do for free. This is all part of my license. Now we do subscribe to Viva. You might not have them, but if you go to the Microsoft website, there's also just more text-based courses. But if you don't have LinkedIn Learning, there's a ton of free resources. So I would encourage you, if you haven't started, to think about how you can look at maybe one of these pathways and maybe share that with your organization so that there is a little bit of a coordinated effort. Right now, LinkedIn Learning has some skill building courses. One is called AI for managers, and then there's one AI for business leaders. that are free, and I believe until the end of October, maybe, because Microsoft is really leaning in on trying to help upskill people. Google has lots of free resources on how to use AI. There's all the massive open online course platforms like Coursera or edX that have free resources as well. ChatGPT has, I think, a ChatGPT Academy now. So there are places that you can go, and it's quite easy to come up with, you know, a learning path that you can say, here's what you do. I curated one for my team, our national team, using things that I had access to. We use Skillsoft, their library of learning. I curated a whole bunch of courses between that and Microsoft courses, and I gave people a pathway so that we're trying to move people through together. And I think that that's a really good way to get started. But of course, we started with mindset. So that was one of the most critical things, to make sure people bought in and that I could address their hopes and their fears from a mindset perspective. Okay, that's it. That's all my content that we're done. You'll get the slides, as I said. My email is on them, so please note the number one. It doesn't mean I'm the number one employee, although that's how I try to interpret it. But I do have a one, non-standard. I'm happy to take any questions that you've got now in the last few minutes. But if you can't stay, or if you've got things that come up afterwards, feel free to reach out. While we're waiting, I'll pass it over to Amber and Clayton in case they have any wrap-up words that they want to share as well.
Just real quick as we wait for...
amazing. Your presentation was very good. I gotta say, hats off to all of you guys, Amber, Clayton, and Michelle. Very good.
Thank you. I'm going to invite you to all my webinars.
I really enjoyed it, actually. It was really, really good.
Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So, sorry, I was just going to say, for any questions, if people would like to raise their hand, if people would like to raise their hands, and I'll call on them, and then any questions that pop up, we can let Michelle answer them. So, if there are any questions, please just raise your hand just to give people an opportunity to have their questions answered. While we wait for that, I've got a couple questions myself. Michelle, what's the biggest challenge you are seeing with AI adoption?
Yeah, I think it is that people are skipping right to that skills development, right? Without the mindset. We talked a little bit about it at the end. It is such a critical thing, and then, you know, just not engaging the leaders to drive that adoption. I think that those are really two things that they're helping. I think the other thing is not acknowledging where generative AI is in its maturity. Remember the chart I showed? It's still bumpy, it's still rocky. Like, we don't want people to say, I tried it, it didn't work, right? We need people to be educated on the fact that, yeah, it's still learning, and I'm still learning how to use it, and that's okay. It's going to get better over time. So I think that those are some things that we have to make sure that we're conscious of, and you know, overcoming any mindset issues as well as the skill set issues.
Okay, no hands up just yet, so I've got one more question. What are some sources you use to keep up with technology changes like Teams?
Yeah, so first of all, YouTube channels are great. Microsoft has a YouTube channel. They also usually every fall and sometimes in the spring, they have a free conference called Microsoft Envision. If you Google it, you can sign up for the virtual session for free. You'll hear the keynotes, you'll hear what's coming. Microsoft also publishes for free a roadmap of what's coming across PowerPoint and Word and that. So I watch all of those types of things as well. Those are some great resources. If you use Google, they do a lot of the same types of things. So follow those tech vendors on YouTube for sure. And there's some really great individuals who also will teach you how to use those things. So there's one's named Mike Tholson. He's a Microsoft guy. I follow him. He's awesome. So.
All right. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, we don't have any questions, and that is just about time. So thanks everyone for coming. Amber, if you don't have anything to add, then I can just shut down the meeting.
Yeah. I just wanted to say thank you to Michelle for your time, and thanks to everybody else for attending and sticking it out. I know this is a longer one, so it's a lot
No,
of sitting,
sorry.
but it was really informative, really great. And I think you gave tons of resources for people to be able to go back and do some research on their own. So I really appreciate your time and everybody's time today. So thank you all.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, and thanks to everyone for their questions. Thanks, Amber and Clayton, for setting it up, and good luck with for everyone to become your business technologist.